My daughter-in-law, Katherine, smiled her perfect, serene smile at the judge, the very same smile she used when she told my son it was time to put me in a home. The lawyer she had hired, paid for with my own money, was listing all the reasons I was no longer competent to manage my own affairs. He used words like dementia, cognitive decline, and erratic behavior. And with each word, I could feel my own son, sitting just a few feet away, shrinking, believing it all, abandoning me in the coldest, most sterile room I had ever been in. He wouldn't even look at me. Hi, everyone. I'm Grandma Beatrice. My name is Beatrice Holloway. I'm 81 years old, and I live in a small apartment that looks out over the harbor in a little coastal town in Maine. It's a lovely view, but it's not my home. My home was taken from me. This is a story I've rehearsed in the quiet of the night 1,000 times, but never dared to speak aloud. It's a story about a quiet war, fought not with weapons, but with whispers. A war for my home, for my money, and ultimately for my own mind. Even my own brother, God rest his soul, never knew the full truth. He just knew that Katherine was helping me, that she was taking care of everything after my son, Leo, grew so concerned about my health. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know that every instance of my forgetfulness was a carefully staged event. They didn't know that my confusion was a lie, planted and watered by the very person who claimed to love me most. The deepest cut wasn't the loss of my house or my savings. It was the slow, deliberate theft of my sanity, executed so perfectly that even my own child became convinced I was a stranger in my own head. It's a terrifying thing, you know, to have to prove you exist inside your own body. Before I begin this difficult journey, I would be so grateful for your support. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It's a small act, but knowing you are out there, listening and believing, it gives me the voice they tried so hard to take away. It gives me the strength to finally reclaim my story. Thank you. My story doesn't begin in a courtroom, under the cold gaze of a judge. It begins in a garden, overlooking the sea, with the man who was my entire world. It begins with love, and with a life built on the bedrock of trust and mutual respect. It all started in the year 1968, when I married my Arthur. Arthur Holloway was a brilliant man. He was a lawyer, but not the kind you see on television. He was quiet, thoughtful, with a mind as sharp as a razor and a heart as gentle as the summer fog that rolled in off the ocean. He believed in two things above all else: the power of a logical argument and the sanctity of a person's mind. Beatrice, he used to say, sitting in his worn leather armchair in the library, a person's mind is their fortress. Everything else can be taken, but as long as you have your reason, you have your freedom. How those words would come back to haunt me. We built a beautiful life together. He designed the house himself, a sprawling, light-filled home on a cliff overlooking the water. Every window was placed to catch the morning sun. He built me a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves because he knew I loved to read as much as he did. Our life wasn't one of wild parties. It was one of quiet contentment. The sound of pages turning, the scent of old books and salty air, the warmth of the fireplace on a winter's night. We were partners in every sense of the word. He never treated me like a simple housewife. He treated me like his intellectual equal, his most trusted counsel. We were a team. And then, in 1974, our team grew. Our son, Leo, was born. He was the light of our lives, but he was different from us. Where Arthur and I were analytical and reserved, Leo was a dreamer. He was a gentle, artistic soul with a heart full of empathy. He wasn't a fighter. He was a peacemaker. He hated conflict of any kind. He was my sweet, sweet boy, and I adored every part of him. I suppose if I am being truly honest with myself, I may have protected him too much from the harshness of the world. It's a mistake many mothers make, I think. We build a nest so soft that our children never learn how sharp the world's thorns can be. Leo grew into a fine man, a graphic designer with a good heart. He met Katherine at a gallery opening in Boston. When he brought her home to meet us, I was so relieved, so happy. To be honest, I had worried that Leo, in his gentle way, would have trouble finding a partner who could navigate the world for him. And Katherine seemed to be the answer to a prayer I didn't even know I had been praying. My first impression of her was that she was flawless. She was beautiful, of course, with elegant blonde hair and eyes the color of a summer sky. But it was more than that. She was poised, intelligent, and so incredibly charming. She didn't just shake my hand. She took it in both of hers, looked me directly in the eye, and said, "Beatrice, Leo has told me so much about you. I feel like I know you already. It is an absolute honor to be in your beautiful home." She fit into our family as if she were a missing piece we never knew we needed. She wasn't intimidated by Arthur's intellect. She engaged with him, asking thoughtful questions about his work. She didn't dismiss my love of literature. She arrived the next time with a first edition of my favorite novel, which she'd found at an old bookstore. She remembered every little detail. She learned our rhythms, our routines. She was perfect. Too perfect. But who complains about perfection when it makes your only son so profoundly happy? When Arthur passed away from cancer 5 years ago, the foundation of my world turned to dust. The light and logic in my life were gone. It was a grief so vast, so disorienting, I felt lost at sea. Leo was devastated, of course, but it was Katherine who became the rock. She handled everything. The funeral arrangements, the endless paperwork, the well-meaning relatives. She was a pillar of strength, not just for Leo, but for me. She would sit with me for hours, not saying much, just holding my hand. She would make sure I ate. She would bring me tea. She was, in those dark days, my savior. And that is how it all began. With kindness, with care, with a gentle, loving hand that was, all the while, measuring me for a cage. The takeover of my life was a masterpiece of subtlety. It started so small, so logically, that I barely even noticed. I was grieving. I was in my late 70s. It was only natural that I would need some help. "Beatrice, dear, don't you worry about these dreadful utility bills," she would say, her voice like smooth, cool marble. "Let me set up online payments for you. It'll be one less thing on your mind." And so I gave her my account information. It seemed like such a sensible thing to do. "Oh, the insurance company needs to speak with you about Arthur's policy," she would announce one afternoon. "It's so complicated. Why don't you let me handle the call? You just rest." And she would. She would sit at the large oak desk in Arthur's library, his library, and speak with authority about my finances, my life, while I sat in the other room, feeling like a child. Little by little, she began to manage everything. My investments, my pensions, my appointments. Leo, also grieving and busy with his own work, was immensely grateful. "Isn't she amazing, Mom?" he'd say to me. "I don't know what we'd do without her. She takes such good care of you." What could I say? That it felt wrong? That I felt like I was being slowly erased from my own life? How could I say that without sounding ungrateful, or worse, paranoid? The real campaign, the war on my mind, began about a year after Arthur's death. It was a slow, insidious poisoning of my own self-confidence. It started with small things. My reading glasses would go missing. I'd search the whole house, growing more and more flustered, only for Katherine to find them in a place I knew I had already looked. "Oh, silly Beatrice," she'd say with a tinkling little laugh. "You, right here on the mantelpiece. You're getting so forgetful." She'd say it with a smile, but the message was clear. You are losing your mind. Then it was appointments. "Don't you remember, dear?" she'd say, looking at me with wide, concerned eyes. "Your doctor's appointment is this afternoon. We talked about it yesterday. I wrote it on the calendar for you." I would look at the calendar, and there it would be, in her neat, perfect handwriting. I had memory of the conversation. Was I really that forgetful? A cold knot of fear would tighten in my stomach. Maybe I was. Maybe the grief was affecting my memory more than I realized. She began to speak for me, even when I was in the room. If a friend called, she would often answer the phone. "Oh, hello, Mary. Beatrice is having a bit of a lie down. She's been a little confused today. I'll pass on the message." She was building a narrative about me to the outside world, brick by brick. The narrative of the poor, senile old widow, so lucky to have such a devoted daughter-in-law. The most corrosive part was how she did it in front of Leo. He would come to visit, and I'd start to tell him about a book I was reading. Katherine would gently interrupt. "Now, Mom," she'd say, calling me that for the first time, a name that felt both intimate and dismissive. "Let's not tire you out. It's a very complicated plot. Maybe you should tell Leo about your garden instead." She was curating my conversations, simplifying my thoughts, presenting me to my own son as a simpleton. Leo, my gentle, conflict-averse Leo, saw none of the malice. He only saw his capable, caring wife looking after his fragile, aging mother. He saw her actions as love. And because he saw it that way, I began to wonder if maybe he was right. Maybe I was fragile. Maybe I was confused. Her gaslighting was so effective, so constant, that I started to become my own jailer. I started to believe her narrative. The final brilliant move, the one that truly locked a cage, came about 2 years ago. Katherine and Leo sat me down in the library. Katherine held my hand, her expression a mask of pure, loving concern. "Beatrice," she began, her voice soft and serious. "Leo and I have been talking, and we are a little worried. There have been a few incidents. The burnt toast last week, forgetting to pay the gardener. We think it might be time to make things a little easier for you, a little safer." Leo nodded, his face etched with worry. "Mom, we love you. We just want to make sure you're protected." Katherine had a great idea. Katherine squeezed my hand. We spoke to a lawyer, a friend of mine who specializes in elder care. He suggested we get a durable power of attorney drawn up. It's just a formality, really. It doesn't change anything day to day. It just means that if you ever have a bad day, or if there's an emergency, I can legally sign documents for you and speak to doctors on your behalf. It's a safety net. It's to protect you. A power of attorney. Arthur's voice echoed in my head from a lifetime ago. "Never sign away your decisions, Beatrice. That's the beginning of the end." A flicker of cold, hard panic went through me. I don't know," I stammered. "I don't think that's necessary. I'm perfectly capable." Katherine's smile didn't falter, but her eyes grew a little colder. "Of course you are, dear. No one is saying you aren't. This is for the what-ifs. Don't you want Leo to have peace of mind? Don't you want me to be able to take care of you properly?" She looked at my son. "Leo, tell your mother you think this is a good idea." And my son, my sweet boy who I had raised to be kind and trusting, looked at me with his earnest, pleading eyes. "Please, Mom, do it for me. I'm so worried all the time. This would help me sleep at night." He checkmated me with his love. To refuse would be to cause my son pain. To refuse would be to seem difficult, stubborn, erratic. It would be proving their point. So, a week later, I sat at that same oak desk in my husband's library, and I signed the document. A friendly, smiling lawyer that Katherine had provided stood over me. Katherine's hand was on my shoulder. Leo was beaming with relief. I felt a profound sense of doom as my pen scratched across the paper, signing away my authority, my autonomy, my fortress. But I smiled because I had to. I had just handed my jailer the key to my cell, and she had convinced me it was a gift. From that day on, the change was palpable. The pretense of me being in charge was dropped completely. Katherine's voice on the phone with my bank or my doctor was no longer helpful. It was proprietary. She was no longer my helper. She was my manager. And my own son began to treat me like one of her responsibilities. He would call her, not me, to ask how I was doing. "How's Mom today? Is she having a good day or a bad day?" I was no longer a person. I was a condition. I was a problem to be managed. And I could feel the walls of my own life, the beautiful life Arthur and I had built, closing in around me, board by silent board. The quiet war was over. I had lost. Or so they thought. The day I signed that power of attorney, the weather was beautiful. The sun was sparkling on the water, just as it always did. But inside my house, a fog had rolled in. A cold, quiet fog that began to obscure everything I once knew as solid and real. The change wasn't immediate. Katherine was far too intelligent for that. It was like the tide coming in, so slow you don't notice your feet are wet until you're already ankle-deep in the cold water. Her authority, once implied, was now absolute. She no longer asked for my opinion. She informed me of her decisions. It started with my mail. She had a silver letter opener, a wedding gift I'd given her and Leo, and she would sit at Arthur's desk every morning and open all my correspondence. "Just saving your old hands the trouble, dear," she'd say with a bright smile. Bills, letters from friends, bank statements, it all passed through her hands first. I felt a flicker of protest, the sense that my privacy was being violated, but what could I say? I had given her the legal right. I had handed her the key. To complain now would seem, well, it would seem senile. The first major offensive in her quiet war was on my memory. It was an assault by 1,000 tiny cuts. One afternoon, I was looking for the silver locket Arthur had given me on our 25th anniversary. It was my most precious possession. I always kept it in the small silk-lined jewelry box on my dresser. I went to get it, wanting to feel its familiar weight in my hand, and the box was empty. Panic, cold and sharp, shot through me. I searched my dresser, my bedside table, my closet. My heart began to beat faster. The locket wasn't just jewelry, it was a piece of him. It was a tangible piece of our life together. "Katherine!" "No," I called out, my voice trembling. "Have you seen my locket? My silver locket?" She came into the room, her face a perfect mask of calm concern. "Your locket, Beatrice? Are you sure you haven't misplaced it?" "Of course I'm sure," I insisted, my voice getting higher. "I always keep it right here. Now, let's not get worked up," she said, her tone placating, as if speaking to a frantic child. "Stress isn't good for your memory. Let's have a look together." She began to search in the most theatrical way, opening drawers I had just closed, looking in places it could never be. With every empty drawer, my own panic grew, and my desperation made me look exactly like the confused old woman she was painting me to be. After 10 minutes of this agonizing performance, she let out a little gasp. "Oh, Beatrice!" "You silly goose." She walked over to the bookshelf, reached behind a row of Arthur's law books, and pulled out the locket. "Here it is. You must have put it here for safekeeping and forgotten. Don't you remember?" I stared at the locket, then at the bookshelf. I had never in my life, put jewelry behind a row of books. It was illogical, absurd. A cold dread washed over me, a dread that was different from the panic of losing the item. This was the dread of losing my mind. I didn't put it there," I whispered. Katherine's smile was full of pity. It was the most painful expression I had ever seen. She patted my arm. "Of course you did, dear. It's all right. We all have moments like these." She didn't have to say another word. The seed of doubt was planted. Not in her mind, but in mine. Did I? Is it possible I did that and have no memory of it at all? No. That evening, I overheard her on the phone with Leo. Her voice was low and filled with sorrow. "She had a bad episode today, darling. She lost your father's locket. She was convinced I had hidden it. She was frantic. I finally found it behind some books. She's getting worse, Leo. I'm really starting to worry." A few days later, Leo visited. He didn't mention the locket, but he looked at me differently. He looked at me with a profound, heartbreaking sadness, as if I were already gone. He treated me with an exaggerated gentleness, speaking slowly, using simple sentences. He was talking to his mother's ghost. And I knew Katherine had won that battle. She had an incident. She had proof. The next front in her war was isolation. My friends, the women I had played bridge with for 30 years, the women who had supported me through Arthur's illness and death, began to disappear from my life. At first I didn't understand why. Mary would call, and Katherine would answer. "Oh, she's napping right now. She's so tired today," she would coo into the receiver. "I'll tell her you called." She never did. One day, I was in the living room when the phone rang. I moved to answer it, but Katherine intercepted the call with the quickness of a cat. "Holloway residence," she said. I heard our friend Eleanor's cheerful voice on the other end. I watched as Katherine's face transformed into that familiar mask of loving concern. "Oh, Eleanor, thank you for calling. She's not having a very good day today. A little bit of confusion. I think it's best if she just rests, but I'll give her all your love." I stood there, frozen, listening to her lie about me. I wasn't confused. I wasn't tired. I was sitting right there, perfectly lucid, wanting to talk to my friend. The lie was so blatant, so unnecessary. And that's when I understood. This wasn't about protecting me. This was about controlling the narrative. This was about cutting me off from anyone who knew the real me. Anyone who could look at me and say, "Beatrice, you seem perfectly fine." She was building a wall around me, and I was trapped inside with my jailer. I tried to fight back, in my own quiet way. The next day, I found my address book and called Eleanor myself. "Eleanor," I said, my voice bright. "I'm so sorry I missed your call yesterday. Katherine said you called." There was a hesitant pause on the other end. "Oh, Beatrice, it's so good to hear your voice. Are you sure you're up for a chat? Katherine said you were unwell." Her words were a punch to the gut. The poison was already working. "I'm perfectly fine, Eleanor. Katherine worries too much." I tried to laugh it off, but it sounded hollow, even to my own ears. We had a short, stilted conversation. The easy warmth we had shared for decades was gone, replaced by a cautious pity on her end. She didn't believe me. She believed the caring, capable daughter-in-law. How could she not? The financial strangulation began in earnest soon after. It wasn't theft in the way a common burglar would understand it. It was far more insidious. Katherine decided the house needed updating. "Beatrice, this furniture is so old and dark," she announced one morning, waving a hand at the beautiful, solid mahogany furniture Arthur and I had chosen together. "And these carpets are a tripping hazard for you. We need to make this place brighter, safer." Before I could protest, she had hired decorators. My money was used to pay them. My house, my sanctuary, was filled with strangers who moved my furniture, my memories, and replaced them with things that were cold, modern, and utterly soulless. She bought a sleek, white leather sofa to replace Arthur's beloved, worn, leather armchair. The armchair where he had read to Leo, where he had held my hand for 50 years. She called it a donation. I felt like a part of my husband's soul had been thrown out with the trash. I confronted her. We were in the library, the one room she hadn't dared to touch yet. "Katherine, you cannot do this," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I had not felt in years. "This is my home. These are my things. You have no right." She didn't get angry. She didn't even raise her voice. She simply looked at me with that calm, infuriating pity. "Beatrice, dear," she said, as if explaining something to a toddler. "We talked about this. The decorators are here to make the house safer for you. We chose everything together, remember?" "No, we did not choose it together." "You chose it." "I don't remember because it never happened." Her eyes softened with feigned sympathy. She took a step towards me. "It's okay. I know this is a lot of change, and change can be confusing when our memory isn't what it used to be. But trust me, it's for the best. You'll love it when it's done." She was rewriting history in real time, right to my face. She was telling me the sky was green, and the most maddening part was the calm certainty with which she said it. She made me feel like I was the one screaming nonsense. The ultimate weapon, the one she saved for when she needed to escalate things to the next level, was the stove. It was a classic, cruel, and terrifyingly effective tactic. I was in the garden one afternoon, trying to find some peace among my roses. I came inside to find Katherine in a state of manufactured panic. "Oh, thank God you're okay," she cried, rushing over to me. Beatrice, you left the gas on. The burner was on, no flame, just gas pouring into the house. We could have had an explosion. You could have been killed. I was bewildered. What? I haven't used the stove since breakfast. You must have, she insisted, her voice trembling. You must have turned it on to make tea and forgotten to light it. Oh, Beatrice. She held her hand to her chest, her breathing heavy. It was a brilliant performance. I knew I hadn't done it. I knew it with a certainty that was absolute. But how could I prove it? It was my word against hers. And she was the sane one. I was the confused old woman. This incident, I knew, was different. This wasn't about a lost locket or a forgotten appointment. This made me a danger to myself and to others. This was the event she needed. This was her justification for the final solution. The next evening, they held the trial. My son and my daughter-in-law sat me down on the new, soulless white sofa that I hated. The room felt cold and sterile, like a doctor's office. It no longer felt like my home. Leo wouldn't look me in the eye. His face was pale and miserable. Katherine, as always, was the picture of composure and sorrowful duty. She held a notepad. She had a list. Mom, Leo began, his voice thick with emotion. We need to talk about what happened yesterday. With the stove, nothing happened, I said firmly. I did not leave the stove on. Katherine let out a long, weary sigh. She placed a hand on Leo's arm. Darling, let me. She turned to me, her eyes full of a terrible kindness. Beatrice, we can't ignore this anymore. It's not just the stove. It's a pattern. I've been keeping a list, just for our own records. And she began to read. January 12th, forgot Dr. Miller's appointment. February 3rd, accused me of hiding her locket. February 28th, left the back door wide open all night. March 15th, got lost walking in the neighborhood. A neighbor had to bring her home. A lie. A complete and utter lie. April 2nd, the incident with the stove. She had documented my descent into madness, a descent that she herself had orchestrated. Each lie was presented as a cold, hard fact. I looked at my son, and I saw in his eyes that he believed every word. His heart was breaking for the mother he thought he was losing. We can't let you live here alone anymore, Mom, he whispered, his own tears finally falling. It's not safe. What if something happens when Katherine isn't here? I couldn't live with myself, so what are you suggesting? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Katherine spoke. There's a wonderful place, Beatrice. Not far from here. It's called Ocean View Gardens. It's a top-of-the-line assisted living facility. You'd have your own beautiful room, nurses on call 24 hours a day, activities. You would be safe. The words hung in the air. Assisted living. Knew a nursing home. They were going to put me away. They were going to take me out of my home. The home my husband built for me, and put me in a facility, all based on a tower of lies. No, I said. The word was a stone. Absolutely not. This is my home. I am not leaving. Leo looked utterly crushed. Mom, please don't be difficult. We're doing this because we love you. This is not love, I said, my voice rising, the fury finally breaking through my composure. This is a prison sentence. And you, I turned to Katherine, my finger trembling as I pointed at her. You have orchestrated all of it. The locket, the appointments, the stove. You did it. You have been lying to my son and trying to drive me mad. The accusation, spoken aloud for the first time, sounded shrill and insane, even to me. It was exactly what she wanted. Katherine didn't flinch. She just looked at Leo, her eyes welling up with tears. You see, darling, she whispered, her voice breaking with feigned hurt. This is what I was talking about. This is what I was talking about. The paranoia. The accusations. She's not herself. She needs professional help. None. My own son looked at me, not with anger, but with a deep, bottomless well of pity and fear. He saw a raving, paranoid old woman, just as she had scripted. He stood up. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, his voice firming with a resolve that shattered my heart. "But our decision is made. We've already spoken to the lawyer. Katherine has the power of attorney. We're going to start the process of selling the house to pay for your care at Ocean View." Selling the house. My home. The place where every memory of Arthur lived and breathed. They were going to sell it. They were going to erase him, and me, completely. The finality of his words, the cold certainty, the utter betrayal of a son choosing to believe a lie over his own mother. It was a blow from which I thought I would never recover. I had no fight left. She had taken my allies, she had taken my son, and now she was taking my home. She had won. In the days that followed, I was a ghost. I walked through the rooms of my home as if I were already dead. Realtors came and went, their polite smiles and cheerful chatter about good bones and market value feeling like a desecration. Katherine handled it all, a gracious and tragic figure, the devoted daughter-in-law forced to make a hard decision for her ailing mother. I felt a profound and suffocating despair. Arthur's words echoed in my mind. A person's mind is their fortress. But my fortress had been breached. The enemy was inside, and she had convinced the guards, my own son, that she was their commander. Who do you turn to when the person you trust most in the world believes you are insane? It was in the library, my last sanctuary, that the spark returned. I was packing a small box of books they would allow me to take to Ocean View. I pulled a heavy law tome from the shelf, one of Arthur's favorites on contract law. As I did, a small leather-bound journal that had been wedged behind it fell to the floor. It was Arthur's. A private journal, one I never even knew he kept. My hands trembled as I opened it. His familiar, precise handwriting filled the pages. It wasn't about cases. It was about his life, his thoughts. And then I saw an entry, dated just a few months before he died. Spoke with Beatrice today about Katherine. I find her remarkable, but there is a coolness there, a transactional quality to her kindness. I see the way she looks at our home, at our things, not with love, but with appraisal. I hope I am wrong. I hope my lawyer's cynicism is not clouding my judgment. But I have advised Beatrice, should anything ever happen to me, to trust her instincts. Logic can be manipulated. Evidence can be fabricated. But the truth has a certain feeling, a resonance. Trust the resonance. Tears streamed down my face. It was a message from the grave, a validation. I wasn't crazy. Arthur had seen it too. He had seen that flicker of cold appraisal in her eyes. Trust the resonance. And in that moment, the fog in my mind cleared. The despair, the confusion, the shame, it burned away, replaced by a cold, clear, diamond-hard resolve. She had lied. She had staged evidence. She had manipulated my son. She had used the law, my husband's sacred profession, to strip me of my life. She thought this was a war of emotions, a battle of wills. She was wrong. This was now a matter of law. And she had forgotten one crucial thing. I was not just a silly old woman. I was Arthur Holloway's wife. I had spent 50 years listening to one of the finest legal minds in the state discuss strategy, evidence, and the art of cross-examination at my dinner table. I was not a lawyer, but I knew how a lawyer thinks. She had her list of fabricated incidents. Find that guy. I would make my own list. I would find my own evidence. I would not let her sell my husband's house and put me away like a piece of old, broken furniture. The fight was not over. It was just beginning. And it would not end in a living room. It would end in a courtroom. Holding Arthur's journal in my hands was like holding a shield. His words were a posthumous gift, a compass pointing me back to myself. Logic can be manipulated. Evidence can be fabricated. But the truth has a certain resonance. The resonance of truth. That was what I had lost, and that was what I would now reclaim. My despair evaporated, and in its place, a lifetime of suppressed grief for my husband, transmuted into a formidable, icy rage. Not a hot, screaming rage that would make me look like the hysterical woman Katherine painted me to be, but a cold, calculating fury. The kind of fury that builds a case, brick by damning brick. I was no longer a victim waiting for the inevitable. I was a plaintiff preparing for trial. The first thing I realized was that Katherine's greatest strength was also her greatest weakness, her arrogance. She believed she had won. She saw me as a nonentity, a piece of furniture to be moved. And a woman who is underestimated is a woman who is no longer being watched. While she was busy meeting with realtors and showing off my home, her future asset, I began my work. My first act was one of subterfuge. I needed a lawyer, but not one Katherine could know about. I used the old prepaid cell phone Arthur had kept in his emergency go-bag in the back of his closet, a relic of his lawyerly paranoia. I found the number for a man named David Chen, a younger lawyer who had once been Arthur's protégé. Arthur had admired his tenacity, calling him a bulldog. I needed a bulldog. I met him not in his fancy office, but on a park bench 2 towns over. I must have looked like a cliché, a little old lady in a hat, clutching her handbag. But when I began to speak, he listened. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I laid out the facts as Arthur would have, the systematic isolation, the fabricated incidents, the power of attorney signed under emotional duress, and Katherine's plan to sell my home and liquidate my assets for her own gain. She has a list of my episodes, I told him, my voice steady. But her evidence is anecdotal. It's he said, she said. My mind is my fortress, Mr. Chen, and she has laid siege to it. But she has made mistakes. We just need to find them. He looked at me for a long moment, his gaze sharp and appraising. Mrs. Holloway, he said finally, a hint of Arthur's same bulldog tenacity in his voice. If even half of what you say is true, this isn't just a case of elder abuse. It's a conspiracy to defraud. Let's find those mistakes. My war room became the library, late at night, after Katherine and Leo had gone to their own home. I was supposed to be sleeping, the confused old woman resting her weary mind. Instead, I was gathering evidence. Katherine had made a critical error in her arrogance. She had assumed all my intelligence was gone. She hadn't counted on the habits of a lifetime. Arthur and I were meticulous record keepers. For 50 years, I had kept a daily journal. Not a diary of feelings, but a simple log. Appointments, visitors, household events. It was my own list. My own timeline. I pulled the journals from the last 2 years out of the bottom of my cedar chest. With a ruler and a pen, I began to cross-reference. Katherine's list said, January 12th. Forgot Dr. Miller's appointment. My journal for that day read, a Katherine called to cancel Dr. Miller. Said he had an emergency. Rescheduled for the 19th. A quick call to Dr. Miller's office from my secret phone confirmed it. They had a record of a cancellation call from Mrs. Holloway's daughter-in-law on that exact date. Her list, March 15th, got lost walking in the neighborhood. A neighbor had to bring her home. My journal, lovely walk. Spoke to Mrs. Gable next door about her hydrangeas for 20 minutes. I called Mrs. Gable. Agnes, I asked, do you remember a day back in March when I got lost? She laughed. Lost? Beatrice, you've walked this neighborhood for 50 years. You know it better than I do. We had a lovely chat that day. Your daughter-in-law was watching us from the window. She looked impatient. One by one, her lies began to unravel. But the locket, the stove, those were her word against mine. I needed more. I needed something undeniable. The inspiration came from a memory of Arthur. He had been obsessed with home security, not because he feared burglars, but because he feared burglars, but because he believed in objective observers. A few years before he died, he had one in the main hallway, one overlooking the back door, and one in the living room, focused on the main entrance. Katherine, in her sweep to update the house, had never even noticed them. They were hidden in smoke detectors and clocks. The recordings were uploaded to a cloud service I had long forgotten about. With shaking hands, I found Arthur's old tablet, logged into the account, and prayed the service was still active. It was. I spent an entire night scrolling back through months of footage. It was tedious, soul-crushing work, watching my life as a silent film. And then, I found it. The day of the lost locket. The footage from the hallway camera was grainy, but clear. It showed me searching my bedroom frantically. Then, it showed Katherine walking out of my room, and as she passed the camera, she glanced around, then slipped something small and silver from her pocket and placed it behind the books on the library shelf. It was a moment of pure, calculated malice, captured forever. My breath hitched. It was the proof. The undeniable truth. I kept watching. I scrolled to the day of the stove incident. The camera in the living room had a partial view of the kitchen entrance. It showed me coming in from the garden. 2 minutes later, it showed Katherine walking into the kitchen. She was in there for less than 30 seconds before she came out, her face already a mask of theatrical panic, ready to discover the gas leak. I didn't cry. A cold, victorious calm washed over me. I had her. I downloaded the video files, saved them to a thumb drive, and gave it to my lawyer the next day. "Here is your smoking gun, Mr. Chen," I said. Or in this case, the unlit stove. The final piece of the puzzle was the house itself. Katherine was rushing the sale, eager to get her hands on the money. The house was already in escrow. But I remembered something else Arthur had taught me. The best laid plans are a house of cards. All you need to do is pull out the right one. Mr. Chen filed an emergency motion to halt the sale of the house and, more importantly, to challenge the durable power of attorney. Katherine, he argued, had obtained it under false pretenses and was not acting in my best interest, but in her own. A competency hearing was set. It was exactly what she wanted, but she had no idea the script had been flipped. She was walking into a trap, armed with a list of lies, while I was armed with the truth on a thumb drive. The day before the hearing, Katherine was in a foul mood. The halt on the sale had infuriated her. "I cannot believe you are being so difficult about this, Beatrice," she snapped, her mask of kindness finally slipping. "The lawyer said this is just a formality, but you are dragging it out and making things so much harder for Leo." I just looked at her. I said nothing. I let her believe she was in control. I let her think I was a confused, stubborn old woman making one last, pathetic stand. I let her underestimate me, right up until the very end. That was my final strategy, one Arthur would have been proud of. Let your opponent defeat themselves with their own arrogance. The courtroom was exactly as I had imagined, cold, imposing, and utterly impersonal. Katherine was sitting at the petitioner's table, looking elegant and concerned in a navy blue suit. She looked every bit the part of a dutiful, worried family member. My son, Leo, sat behind her, his face a miserable portrait of a man torn between love and duty. He wouldn't look at me. That cut deeper than anything. Katherine's lawyer, a slick man with a confident smile, stood and began to paint his picture. He presented me as a woman who had lived a wonderful life, but was now, tragically, in the throes of a steep cognitive decline. He spoke of my erratic behavior, my paranoia, my inability to care for myself. Then, he called Katherine to the stand. She was a masterful actress. Her voice was soft, her eyes filled with crocodile tears as she recounted the list of my supposed failings. She told the story of the lost locket, her voice breaking as she described my frantic accusations. She told the story of the stove, dabbing her eyes with a tissue as she recounted her terror at finding the gas leak. "I love my mother-in-law," she concluded, looking at the judge with heartbreaking sincerity. "All I want is to ensure she is safe. The power of attorney, selling the house to pay for her care. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but I am doing it out of love." It was a brilliant performance. I could see the judge, a woman in her 60s, looking at me with an expression of profound pity. I could feel my own son's shame and sorrow radiating from across the room. In that moment, they all believed her. Then, It was my turn. My lawyer, Mr. Chen, stood up. The petitioner has painted a very compelling portrait of senility, he began. But a portrait is a work of art, not a statement of fact. Let's look at some facts. He called me to the stand. I walked slowly, deliberately, and sat down. I looked at the judge, and for the first time, I looked directly at my son. His eyes were full of pain. He quickly looked away. Mr. Chen started with my journal. Mrs. Holloway, could you please read your entry for January 12th of last year? I read it. Calmly. Clearly. Then he submitted the sworn affidavit from the doctor's office, confirming Katherine's cancellation call. The judge's expression shifted, just slightly, from pity to curiosity. He continued. He had me read my journal entry about the walk where I supposedly got lost. Then he submitted the affidavit from my neighbor, Agnes, confirming we had a long, lucid conversation that day. With each piece of evidence, Katherine's story began to look less like a tragedy and more like a script. I could see her smile tightening at the edges. Then, Mr. Chen turned to the locket. Your Honor, he said, we've heard a very emotional story about a lost locket. We'd now like to play a short video. It is from a security camera installed by the late Mr. Holloway in the main hallway of the house. A screen was set up. The courtroom was silent as the grainy footage played. We all watched me, frantic. And then we all watched Katherine, cool as ice, walk out of the room and hide the locket behind the books. A collective gasp went through the small gallery. Katherine's face went white as a sheet. I looked at Leo. His mouth was hanging open, his eyes wide with a dawning, sickening horror. He was seeing her, truly seeing her, for the very first time. Mr. Chen didn't stop. And now, a video from the day of the alleged gas leak. The second video played. The footage of Katherine striding into the kitchen, staying just long enough to turn a knob, and then emerging with her performance of panic already on her face. It was irrefutable. It was monstrous. Katherine's lawyer was on his feet, objecting, but the judge silenced him with a wave of her hand. She was staring at Katherine, her face a mask of cold fury. The pity was gone, replaced by a contempt so profound it was almost frightening. Mrs. Larson, the judge said, her voice like cracking ice. Do you have an explanation for what we have just seen? Katherine just stared, her perfect composure shattered. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I watched my son. He looked from the screen to Katherine, and then finally to me. His face was a wreck of shame, disbelief, and a grief far deeper than anything he had felt before. This was the grief for a living person, the wife he never knew. The illusion was not just cracked, it was utterly obliterated. He stood up, knocking his chair over, and stumbled out of the courtroom, a choked sob escaping his lips. The rest was a formality. The judge ruled in my favor on every single point. The power of attorney was immediately revoked. The sale of the house was permanently canceled. The judge didn't just rule. She eviscerated Katherine, recommending the district attorney open a criminal investigation for fraud and perjury. My fortress was secure. I had won. I didn't see Leo for a week. He called once, but I didn't answer. I needed time. I needed the silence of my own home, my own mind, to heal. When he finally came to the house, he looked like a ghost. He stood in the doorway, unable to cross the threshold into the home he had tried to take from me. Mom, he whispered. The word was heavy with a shame, so deep it was painful to witness. There are no words. I'm sorry isn't enough. It will never be enough. He told me everything. That Katherine had filed for divorce, that she had cleaned out their joint bank accounts and disappeared. He was broken. He was alone. I believed her, he said, his voice cracking. How could I believe her over my own mother? How could I have been so blind? I looked at my son, my gentle dreamer son, and the last of my anger faded away, leaving only a profound, aching sadness. Because you have a good heart, Leo, I said, my voice softer than I expected. You see the good in people because you are good. She used your own best quality against you, and against me. Our relationship is not what it once was. It is a ruin, and we are two survivors picking through the rubble, trying to see what can be salvaged. The trust is gone, perhaps forever. But he comes to dinner every Sunday, in my house, my home. He helps me in the garden. He sits in the library, in the quiet, and sometimes we talk. Sometimes we don't. We are learning a new language, one built on a painful, devastating truth. I learned that the most dangerous prisons are not the ones with bars. They are the ones built inside your own mind by the people you trust the most. They are built with whispers of "you're confused" and "you're forgetful," and "I'm only doing this because I love you." I learned that your mind truly is your last and greatest fortress. And when someone lays siege to it, you must fight back with everything you have. Not with their weapons of emotion and manipulation, but with your own. With logic, with truth, and with an absolute, unshakable belief in your own reality. So to anyone out there who feels the fog rolling in, who hears those whispers that make you doubt yourself, please listen to my story. If you feel like you are being managed instead of loved, if your reality is constantly being questioned, do not accept it. Write things down. Keep a log. Talk to someone you trust on the outside. Do not let them isolate you. Do not let them convince you that your own mind is a hostile territory. Protecting your sanity is not an act of paranoia. It is the ultimate act of survival. You are the sole authority on your own life. Do not ever, for anyone, surrender that power. Thank you for providing me with a safe space to tell my story. Your time and your belief are a gift. If what I've shared has resonated with you, please show your support by liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and ringing the notification bell. In the comments below, please feel free to share your own experiences with finding strength in difficult times. We are all fortified by the stories of others. Love you all. This is Grandma Beatrice, and I'll see you in the next story.